Thank you for joining our webinar, Addressing Next Generation 911 Requirements with Address Manager 2.1, whether you're joining us live or watching the recording that we're making today. My name is Chris Wilcox. I am a product manager on the technology strategy team here at Esri Canada, and I will be your moderator today. We appreciate you taking this opportunity to learn about the work we've been doing and the products we're developing for the public safety community here in Canada. I'm joined today by my colleagues Robert Harris and George Karupis. Our goal is to provide you with information that you will find helpful when preparing your community for the upcoming upgrade to Canada's 911 system. Here is an overview of what we plan to talk about today. We will give an update on Canada's next generation 911 transition and give an overview of the next generation 911 GIS data model. Recently released an upgrade to Address Manager version 2.1, and we wanted to show it off. So we will talk about what is new and see a demonstration of some of the new capabilities. We also have some poll questions today, and this brings us to our first poll question. Have you started your next generation 911 preparedness journey? Your options are A, yes, I've started; B, no, but I'm starting soon; or C, what is next generation 911? I unfortunately don't get a chance to answer this. I was trying to click on my yes, I've started. So right, and we are getting quite a few answers. So a lot of you have started. That's very good news. I am a lot more confident in our efforts for next generation 911 as a country, given the results of this poll. All right. And to talk about Canada's next generation 911 transition, we have our first speaker, Robert Harris, who is an emergency number professional that works here at Esri and also contributes to Emergency Services Working Group, aka civic. Robert, take it away.
Great, thanks, Chris, and thanks for that poll. I always love asking that question and seeing where everyone is across the country and where they are in their next gen journey. It makes me happy that so many have started and are well along it. And hopefully for those that are new to that journey, we'll help pave some road for you today and answer some questions that you may have on it. So why are we here today? This thing you may have heard of, this next generation 911 NG9-1-1. It's really a bit of a new dawn for many of us, for GIS, for emergency services, and a lot of local governments. And we're really spanning or spawning a new generation of geospatial first responders and doing a little bit of re-imaging the role of local government GIS teams across the country. And, in a nutshell, a next gen 911 is a lot of things, but really it's about the need to catch up. We are shifting and we are moving from our current legacy 911 system. It's done us well for the last 4 decades, built on old analog technology. It's a whole lot of tables on the back end making stuff happen and making things work. And we're moving to a new IP-based end-to-end solution that will have much better location accuracy for devices and people calling into next gen 911. Will enable some really cool things like real-time texting and the capability to send video and additional data with 911 calls. And really, the crux of the matter, or the crux of it is, this is going from something being table-driven to something that is GIS-driven. And what is next gen? It is a whole lot of things. We have a nice big long list here of things that really what next gen 911 is, but I want to draw your attention to kind of the bottom elements. These are the ones that are impacting us as GIS professionals the most. it's moving to international data standards for the work that we're doing, moving to geodetic call routing, so using the location of your device to route a 911 call, and really unlocking much more accurate caller location data along with that call. So, not just your X and Y location, but also your Z, and really digging down into dispatchable location. With NextGen, we can really get down, instead of just looking at a civic address, really getting down to a floor, wing, and even to a seat level in some instances. And where are we today? The NextGen timeline is long, but not that long. And there are a number of key milestones that we've already hit in our transition to NextGen here in Canada. We're here. We're about halfway through 2024, and some of the big milestones that we have coming up is the decommissioning date for the current enhanced 911 network. Currently expected to be in March, although we do know that some interventions have been filed with the federal government to try to perhaps nudge that deadline a little bit. But if you look along the bottom of your screen there, you have a proof of concept geodetic call routing. That's kind of the next big one for GIS data providers in this country, and that's locating callers using your GIS data. We are planning out that POC now, with potentially going forward with some early adopters next year, but really looking to have the whole country in production by the spring of 2027 with good GIS data being used for call routing. All right, so that's what NextGen 911 is. Let's dig into the data. And the next couple of slides are really highlighting some of those GIS data requirements that are coming towards you or about to be coming towards you. So as you may have picked up already, NG911 relies on GIS technology. As GIS professionals, we know what this is. This geolocation process, it's a point and polygon. We are going to use highly accurate device locations, highly accurate civic locations to determine which PSAP, that the public safety answering point, that 911 center, using that point and polygon to figure out exactly which one of those PSAPs your call needs to route to, so that your 911 call can get answered appropriately. And the standards that we're using for these come from NENA, the National Emergency Number Association. They are the North American group that are basically creating and setting these standards for all of North America. They have their standard for NG911 GIS data model. We are currently in version 2A of that, and a number of us and some people on this call are working on creating the next version, the version 3 of that document. Also under construction is another standard called the CLDXF Canada, CA, and that is the Civic Location Data Exchange Format, and that is laying out really all of the we call them location objects, so civic addresses, those lat longs that pass through the 911 system, setting out the standard of how that data needs to be structured in such a way so that it can pass through all of the different components of NextGen 911. That one is under construction. It should be coming out. NENA has a very rigorous approval process with many steps, and that one should be coming out for a public review here anytime now. If you dig into the GIS data model standard, you'll find that NENA has organized a number of layers into one of 3 categories. So the first being required, which is just that. These are the layers that are required for the NextGen 911 system to work, for calls to route. The strongly recommended are additional layers that can be of assistance to route a call, but may not be a core need to route it. And then we have our recommended layers. And basically, the way I like to think of these is they make a pretty map. So they provide additional kind of intelligence to those answering 911 calls to kind of help them with some situational awareness, or just build that more complete map. But the required layers are really where a lot of people are focusing and where the most focus should be to make sure you nail these ones. We have some things that are familiar to folks: road center lines, site structure address points. Those are your civic addresses. Your PSAP boundary, so that 911 answering point, its boundary. A number of other emergency service boundaries, so police, fire, ambulance. And a new one, one that may perhaps be new to folks, is the provisioning boundary. And essentially the provisioning boundary is a polygon that says, hey, I'm responsible for everything in this polygon boundary, and only I should be sending in data for it. So, make sure that nobody else is sending in data inside my provisioning boundary. It's essentially what it's being used for. And for those of us that have been around some of these next-gen tables, we like to use the term public safety grade GIS data. And really that's a fancy way of saying, it's our GIS data, but it's compliant with those standards. The data is highly accurate, it's complete, it's properly attributed, and if we run the topology checks, they're topologically valid, they conform to the domains, all of these other things. This is what we mean when we're talking about public safety grade GIS data. And really, for those of you that have heard me give, flavors of this presentation before, we like to think of the GIS data as Canada's next-gen GIS data iceberg. We have our piece on the top, our GIS data, and this is where a lot of people focus, and rightly so. It is data that's going to run the system. But be mindful that that's the piece that's visible above water. There's a whole lot more going on beneath the surface, especially around information management. Do you have the right procedures to build and maintain these data sets? Do you have the right the right people doing the right things? Do they have the right tools to do those jobs? That kind of thing in information management. And then, do you have the organizational understanding? Are the right people talking to the right people? Do we know who owns this thing? Are our processes well documented? Do we have, the right agreements with our police chiefs and our fire chiefs? And are they collaborating as part of the process to define their boundaries? These things under the water become critically important as we go down our next-gen 911 journey. And that brings us to our second poll question. So I've talked about it, the NENA NG9-1-1 GIS data model standard. I'm curious, in your data and your day-to-day data, are you meeting this standard? We've got a couple options. Yes, exclamation, great. No, but we're working towards it. Or, perhaps we're going to build some really rigorous ETL processes and data validation processes. Or maybe I have no idea. I don't even know where to start. A couple of options. I know in a few more seconds, the poll will wrap up, and then we'll see the results here. I'm really curious to see, we asked already where folks are in their journey. So now we're really curious, where are folks, on that journey? Where is your data in that journey? All right, so the answer should come up here. Great. To the 14% on top, amazing. And the 72 that are working towards it, love it, absolutely love it. And when you're done with this poll and you're done seeing the answers, you can click the little close button on the bottom right, and we'll move into the next part of this presentation.
Thank you, Robert. Our next speaker is the Director of Technology Strategy here at Esri, George Krupis. George, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Chris. Glad to be here. Hello, everyone. So what I'm going to talk about today is our address manager application and how it fits into NextGen 911. Robert explained what NextGen 911 is all about. He talked about the importance of GIS data, and that NG911 is based on accurate, clean, precise GIS data that municipalities are responsible for collecting and providing to their local aggregator. Most likely that would be the telco, or it could be a provincial or a municipal aggregator. So Address Manager is a Esri Canada product. It's a web application that my group, Tech Strategy, has developed. Chris Wilcox is a product manager for the application for this solution. It manages an inventory of civic addresses, road center lines, and service boundaries, while also ensuring and helping ensure the accuracy and completeness of that data with NENA NG9-1-1. It helps organizations really meet the critical GIS data requirements of NG9-1-1, ensuring that data that you manage with Address Manager is accurate and complete. You can then take that data, export it out into the NENA data model that Robert briefly described to you, and push that data or send that data to your local aggregator. It's built on the Esri Calcite design system. If you're familiar with Calcite, that's Esri's UI UX experience. Also, it's built on the most recent version of the JavaScript API, and we're taking and leveraging a lot of the new capabilities that are part of the API. The data model is aligned with the NG9-1-1 NENA GIS data model version 2A. It includes the recommended and strongly recommended layers. So all of the layers that are defined by NENA. Robert showed you those three sections of data models of a data model that Esri Address Manager supports them. You can also deploy our Address Manager on ArcGIS Online, on Enterprise as well. You can store the data in Portal as feature services, or Oracle, Enterprise Geodatabase, Postgres, or an Microsoft SQL Server, Enterprise Geodatabase. If you choose to go with the online deployment, then all your data is stored in your online organizational subscription. So some of the functional highlights of Address Manager are the editing tools. So there are a number of editing tools that are part of Address Manager that provide you tools to edit, create, manage address points, road center lines, the service boundaries, the fire, EMS, police, PSAP, provisioning, municipal, and others. There are other boundaries that are part of the NG9-1-1 data model. You can create edit tools for them as well. You can also create any edit tools for any point, line, polygon feature that you wish to add to your web map. Address Manager is web map centric. You need a web map to use as your source for Address Manager. And if you include other feature types in there, you can create edit rules and edit tools for them. NG9-1-1 workflows and quality assurance rules. So it's really focused on the NG9-1-1 workflows, ensuring the data quality of the data is compatible or complies with NextGen. It also manages the life cycle of your addresses and road center lines as well, from a tentative state. So everything goes in as a tentative state up until you make that address or that feature active, to when you actually retire that address. And since it's built on the ArcGIS platform as feature services and web maps, and I think we're all familiar with that, you can share that data with the rest of the ArcGIS system. So let me go on and give you a bit of a demonstration. I'll just bring up the application here. And oops, I'll bring up the application. There we go. We have our application on the left-hand side. You have the edit tools. So there's editing tools for addresses, placing units for condominiums or apartments, editing tools for road center lines, and editing tools for boundaries. On the right-hand side, You've got your map-oriented tools, as you expect to see, layers, turn off layers, tables. If you want to view attribute tables, I'll just bring up the master street name index. So the master street name index is a table of all the valid road names within your community. So you really need to populate this table with your road names. You have the full road name, along with the suffix types and other parts that make up a road name. Direction, for example, the road name body and the municipality that road name is part of. So the system, the application, is driven by this table. So this is the most important table in the application. It really prevents you from having to key in road names when placing addresses and road center lines. It's driven by the master index table. Base map picker, legend, bookmarks, you have measure tool, and you have print tool. I'll start off with placing an address. I'll go to my bookmark. These bookmarks can be created within the application, or they're created within the web map. I'll go to my address tool, and I've got a number of tools, ways of creating addresses. I'll add an address point. So I'll just add one address point along here, Crosby Street. I've got some parcels, I've got some buildings. I'll place the address point inside the parcel. Notice when I place the address point that it placed it at the centroid of the parcel. I've configured my application to set parcel centroid as the default placement for address points. You can set them to a number of different placement types when you configure the application. I can go and start placing more address points, or I can just say, I'm done with that one. The edit pane appears. First thing I want to do is pick the road name. I go to the lookup. It finds all the roads that are within my current extent. There's Crosby. I can highlight Crosby. So I'll pick Crosby. It transfers the road name attributes that are actually coming from the master index, the road name body, the road name type, the direction, the suffix, the prefixes, and transfers them into my edit pane. I then can enter in an address number. So I'll just enter in an address number, 1000. System automatically creates the full address for you. Now, the full address is not required by NENA. NENA, what you simply send to your NextGen 911 aggregator, are the address parts, the number, the body, the prefixes, and the suffixes. So that's automatically updated for you. Also notice that a postal code was updated. That's because I placed the address point inside this postal code boundary, this gray boundary. I just made up that boundary for now. And there's an edit rule that says for addresses, when they fall inside a polygon, in this case, a postal code polygon, transfer the postal code from that polygon into the postal code field. And the same thing is done for the parcel ID. It transfers the parcel ID from the parcel feature into my address. Now I can save it. Next thing I can do is, well, I know I have a bunch of parcels here that I want to address. And instead of using the add address point one at a time, what I'm going to use is the fill parcels. So I click that. And then I just highlight the parcels that I want to address. So I just draw and select my parcels. Places down the address points at the centroid. And then I go through the same steps. This time I'll pick Crosby as well. I'll pick the address number. Instead of going through each point, as you can see here, 1 of 9, I'll pick the hamburger tool here. And I'll say I want to start at 1002 as the first address, and step by 2. I say apply. If I click labels, you can see the address number is applied to each of those address points. The next thing I can do is say, well, those address points are along the same road. So I'll just say copy that field, road name body, to all the other address points that I've created. So as I go clicking through, then it's got the full address, it's got the name, it's got also the postal code, the parcel ID that it picked up for each of those addresses. You can see the parcel ID changes for each of those address points, and then some other default values that, again, when I configure the application, I just set some defaults for these values, for these attributes. And now I've got all these points. Now, at some point in time, these addresses are going to become active. And when they come active, you want to set the status, change the status. Currently, the status is set to a tentative mode. Here, I'll just do a quick identify, and you can see the attributes that have been captured for an address. And many of these attributes, or many of these attributes are NextGen 911 attributes. Some of them are attributes that Address Manager uses to manage an address. And you can add your own attributes as well to the data model. Now, when these addresses become active, what I'll do is I'll just go select all those addresses with the Update Status tool. I click this button to select all the addresses, make them active. It comes up with an activation date. So the activation date tells me when do I want them active. I can make these active sometime in the future and then submit those addresses to the aggregator, and the aggregator will look at that and say, oh, these will become effective in the future, maybe, July 1st. And at that point in time, they become active in the 911 system at the aggregator or at the telco. What I will do is just pick this current date and time. Basically, I'm saying make them active now. And I say yes. And active features I've set to a blue color. We also have the ability to update condominium units or apartment units. So let me go to my units tab. I'll zoom in here. I've got a building. I'll click unit. First thing I need to do is select the primary address. So 7250 is the primary address that I'm going to start adding units. First thing I do is place down the first floor. So I'm just placing down the first floor for 3 units. I'm done. You can see here in the edit pane, I've got the 3 units. So there's 1, there's 2, there's 3. But I know that I've got a number of floors that I also need to apply unit numbers to. So I'll go to my 3D view and just kind of show you in 3D what's going on here. I've just taken the building layer and extruded it with a height. Let me just turn off the buildings so that we can see the units. So there's my first floor. I'm going to select on my edit pane, unit 1. Unit 1 is selected on the map. I click my floors and I say, let me regenerate the floors. I want 15 floors for this particular unit. I also want to skip floor 13. And my floor height is about 3 meters. And I can change that if I want. So if you've got a different height somewhere in the middle of the building, you can adjust the height in the middle of the building. I've added 15 floors to the first unit. Let me just turn on the labels. And you can see that, oops, I'll go 12, jumps to 14 because I skipped 13. Turn off the labels. I'll now go to the second unit. And let's say that maybe there are different floors on the second floor. So I've got kind of an irregular shaped building. Let's say that there are 10. I'll say, okay. Now I'll go to floor 3 and I'll say floors. And let's say there are, I don't know, 5 floors. Say, okay. Now when I go to my filter and say show all, I've got all my units stacked on top of each other for those 3 units, and I've got an irregular shaped building. I could have just as easily set them all to the same number of floors. So when you're finished, by the way, if you don't like the position of that particular row set of units, you can kind of move them over. If you go to 2D view, you'll see that in 2D view, these units are stacked on top of each other. And I'll just hit save. And if I do an identify with the the basic identify tool, you can see here all the units stacked on top of each other. And you can click the one you want. Attributes are all updated. The address number is updated. The parcel ID is updated, and all the other data, all the other attributes are updated. The unit number is updated for you. The unit type is a unit. Okay. If I have just a developer plan, we're starting out a new subdivision, a new build. I don't have any reference. I don't have any parcels. I don't have any road center lines. All I have is an image, georeferenced image, like we have here. So I'll just show you that. I can turn it off, turn it on. And if I want to start addressing base using the image as a reference, then I can go again to the address tool. And I have a tool here called address temporary linear feature. I'll click it. Wants me to draw a construction line, basically. I click the construction line. I can adjust the distance of those address points. There are 11 address points by default. I can adjust those. But what I really know is the width of each lot. Each lot is 15.3 meters. And what I'll do is I'll just say 15.3 meters. So I get them fairly evenly spaced in each of those parcels as I'm using the image as a reference. I can say then generate those address points. I go look up the name. Now I don't have any roads, so it didn't find anything in the extent. I then go to the master index. And what I've set up in the master index is just a temporary name that I like to use when placing temporary address points. So temporary road under construction. Then I can go to numbering them, and I'll just number them using the lot numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can then say, just copy that name, road name to all the other names, and just hit save. As well as I could have edited each individual attribute of those address points if I wanted to. So that's basically it for Address Manager. There is one more thing I like to show you though. If I go into my bookmarks, and let me just go into full extent here. Robert mentioned something about service boundaries. We do manage service boundaries and create service boundaries. What I'll do is I'll create a fire boundary. Now I do have my fire boundaries turned off, so let me turn those on. I'll go to add feature. I can create multi-point polygon, or I can create a rectangular polygon. Let me just create a multi-point polygon. I'll just roughly place this so you can kind of get the idea. the interactive draw for polygons. I hit return. I'm happy with that. And then I get the attributes that are part of a fire polygon. Again, the NENA data model, or the next gen 9-1-1 data model, defines a number of attributes that are part of a fire polygon that you need to submit to the aggregator. These are all filled in for you by default. Again, you can use the configuration tool to set default values for all of these values once these values are known. I'll have a display name, so what I'll call this is fire 111, and I'll just save that. And now you've got a fire polygon. I've just done the identify, and you've got all the attributes that are automatically updated for you. So the idea is with Address Manager, this is your tool for not only managing the addresses and road center lines. I guess I could show you creating a road center line. Maybe I've got a few minutes left, and it's basically just a draw tool to place roads. Let me just turn off the fire polygon because it's kind of in our way. What I'll do is let me go back to my units, come in here, and if I want to go to road, add a feature, I can, snapping is turned on, so you've got snapping capabilities with this gearbox. I go click, and then click for that part of the road, and it's the same sort of sequence. Pick a road name body. I'll just pick a road name in here. The attributes get populated. The road ranges, the address ranges are populated by default. I'll talk about updating address ranges in my next slides. And you just say save, and it saves the road center line. So once you've managed your data in Address Manager, you've edited the data, you can then export this out to an NG9-1-1 database or file geodatabase and submit that to your aggregator. So what's coming in 2.2? We have scheduled for the end of Q4 of this year, support for a viewer user type. So if you're just a viewer user type, no editing, you can use Address Manager to view data. Update address range tool, so you can click the road center line and it will automatically find the addresses on the left side, the right side, the from to, figure out the parity and update the address range fields in the road center line. Join two road center lines. Sometimes you've got two roads that you want to join and make them one continuous road center line. The join will also recalculate the left from addresses. Splitting a road, sometimes you need to split a road at an intersection. Maybe you've just drawn the road crossing another road and you want to split it at that intersection. You could do a split. It recalculates, again, the ranges. Flip direction, sometimes you want to go from left to right to left direction on a road, use the flip, and the address ranges are also maintained. The service boundary overlap checks. So I showed you that you can create boundaries. The overlap checks will be part of 2.2 to prevent you from creating overlaps between boundaries of the same type. So NENA does not allow you to have a fire boundary, for example, overlapping another fire boundary. That rule is in place. However, there are exceptions, so you can always override the exception if there's an exception in your area. Map filter, so you can create a map filter to filter the map, and also alias road names using the NENA specification for maintaining alias road names. So that's coming in 2.2, due around the end of September. So we have a question. So does your organization currently have an address management solution for NG 911? Yes, it's based on ArcMap. So you may have an ArcMap solution that you built many years ago, or it's based on Pro. If you're lucky, maybe you've created something on Pro recently to manage addresses, or maybe you're just using ArcMap and Pro out of the box. Yes, you do have a solution based on non-Esri technology. No, you do not have a solution that is address management for NG 911 or D. I don't know. So we'll let everyone answer the question. So we've got lots of users on ArcMap or Pro, which I would imagine. And you got some users on non-Esri technology, others no, and others I don't know. Excellent. So I'll pass it back to Chris. And
yeah, so we actually have some questions here. And I will start with the disclaimer as far as the Canada Post questions. I'm not sure that we're gonna, like, we might be able to give some people some advice on where to find maps, but as far as when Canada Post assigns new postal codes, we're not certain here at Esri when that happens and where that's rolled out to. George, can you confirm what versions of ArcGIS Enterprise
you need 11.2 and above.
Okay. And is parcel ID a required field for address manager work?
Parcel ID is not a required field. It is in the address data model, but it's not a required field. You can configure it to ignore that field,
okay,
or even remove it from your model.
Okay. And does it matter if data is stored in an enterprise geodatabase versus a data store?
No, we support them all. We support data stores, Oracle Enterprise Geodatabase, Postgres, and SQL Server Enterprise Geodatabase.
And the georeference subdivision that was added as a hosted feature layer?
That's right.
Good.
Yeah, you have to take the image and georeference it, publish it into your portal, and then you can add it to the web map by just using the web map viewer, or you can add it to your web map using the application. Address Manager application also allows you to add a georeference image to your map.
And I assume that would work for condo plans as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay. Any georeferenced image.
Okay. Are there any tools or workflows that would validate addresses against other systems?
Not part of Address Manager per se. I don't know what Esri provides as part of the suite of ArcGIS tools. That's something to look into.
Okay. And then does ArcGIS Manager support bilingual street names? Yes. You can put it in English or French, and you can also provide an alias. Is that
correct? Yeah. It supports both English and French names.
Okay.
Sometimes the street name prefix for avenue is in French on the prefix, and on the suffix it's English if you want like a completely bilingual road name. I've seen that.
And you had everything, you had the points going into the centroid of a parcel polygon. Those can be customized, set to be located on, like, say, a specific side of a building or in a.
Yes, you can snap it to a specific side of the building. So the snapping rules are active when you place the address point, or you can have it automatically placed at the centroid of the building. So that is also a default. So if you place your cursor inside the parcel, it'll place at the centroid of the building, or if you place your cursor on top of the building, it'll place it at the centroid of the building, or you can drag the point and snap it to the side of a building.
And are you able to customize fields? So say an address is being used for assessment or water quality, they might have different information.
You can add any field you want to the data model. There are certain fields that are required, specifically the NextGen 911 fields. I mean, the whole idea is to ensure compatibility with NextGen, but you can certainly add your own fields to the data model and manage them through Address Manager and create your own validation rules for those fields, domain tables, that sort of thing.
We have a case to send out some licensing documentation after this based on the questions that are coming in. But yeah, I don't know if you wanted to take a look through some of these and see if there's any others you can pick off real quick. Is it possible to alter street addresses for some units for the same condo? So like a different street address for the same building?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So you can place as many addresses on a parcel as needed. If you've got multiple buildings on a parcel and each of those buildings have different addresses, you can create address ports as long as the address is unique. So the address has to be unique. So you may have, I don't know, 101 Main Street and then 101B Main Street or 101A Main Street, but they're all associated to a building that's in the same parcel. You can absolutely do that. And then add units to each of those primary buildings.
If you already have a fire polygon, but it's missing some of the attributes, can you load that polygon into Address Manager and have the rules configured? Will it still auto-populate and flag any NENA compliant issues?
Absolutely. So if you got data, the idea is that you would take your existing data and pour it into the Address Manager data model, and then use Address Manager to maintain that data and that information going forward.
Okay. Is the calculate address range tool customizable?
It's not customizable, but there are some controls to help you identify the addresses that are associated to the road center line.
Okay.
So English and French is supported. Does it support First Nations special characters? I would say yes. I mean, the character set is the character set, so it supports, the extended character set. That's something I would have to test, but I'm pretty sure it would support the extended character set.
Does Address Manager work with reference services, or not hosted data, but referenced?
Reference services, I guess. What they're trying to say is maybe referencing some other enterprise geodatabase that has data layers stored in it. Yes. So if you don't want to use the road center line layer or data model, you could use a reference layer as the road center line layer, for example, or parcel layer. That's a better example would be parcels. So we do provide a data model for parcels, but it's a very, light data model only for the purposes of Address Manager to run and find a parcel and place a parcel at the centroid. But typically you may have your own parcel layer that you want to reference and use it within Address Manager, and that you can definitely do.
Do you have any advice for if somebody is considering Address Manager? Do you have any advice for preparing their data for it?
So a number of the things that I've come across, issues that I'm across with data, is that NextGen 9-1-1 requires the address parts. So you need the prefixes and suffixes and types and separate attributes. I've seen some cases where that does exist in separate parts, and I've seen cases where all they have is a full address field and in everything in one field. So the challenge would be breaking apart that field and separating them into separate parts. So that's one of the big challenges that I've come across is that situation where the full address is just one field and it's not separated out. So you'll need to separate it out to support NextGen.
Are there any validation or QC procedures built in for existing data after importing? I might need a little clarification on that question.
Yeah. So if there's a couple of questions on licensing and pricing, I would ask you to talk to your account manager for licensing and pricing. But you can create as many instances of Address Manager as needed. For example, you may create an instance of Address Manager that only exposes the addressing tools. You can create another instance that just exposes the boundary tools, or you want to have an instance that removes the road editing tools, for example. So those would be separate instances that you configure for different use cases or for different users. You may have a test environment, staging environment, production environment. Again, you can create instances of Address Manager. You can have as many users you want to access Address Manager. So the price is not based on how many user or user types you have accessing it or how many instances that you create. But you can contact your account manager for details.
And so we have a little more information on the reference services. So they were referring to editing data coming from a service where the source of the data is in an enterprise geodatabase, for example. So not hosted on ArcGIS Online. Yes.
Yes. Yep. You can do that.
Yep. And is there a function to place new addresses on building footprints? Yes, is the answer.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
And I think as I'm looking, I'm trying to find, can we use the same layers from Address Manager and ArcGIS Pro, or do we have to sync to another layer we can consume in Pro?
You can consume those layers in Pro, certainly. But remember that the rules are part of the Address Manager application. So the editing rules are part of the Address Manager application, not part of Pro. So that.
Okay.
Where do we start?
Great.
Is the last question. Well, I think you start by talking to your account manager if you're interested in Address Manager. If you don't know who that is, you can contact Chris Wilcox or myself, George Karupis, and we can help you out.
How do we reconcile edits from multiple users? have that.
So we are looking at version editing, versioning. We're looking into that and we'll make it part of Address Manager to support versioning.
I think
Okay.
largely a lot of these are licensing questions, but there are a few we can try and answer them quickly or get back to people, I believe. So are there, yep, I've asked this one out loud. Address Manager supports multi-users, as George mentioned. We're working on version editing. So that's,
yeah. So the JavaScript API currently has, I believe it's in beta. Version editing is in beta for the JavaScript API. So we'd have to look into that and build something supported. And then when it comes out of beta, we'll be able to release it. But it's certainly on our roadmap to integrate version editing in the application.
if you edit data in Address Manager, can you edit it in Pro?
Well, you can, but again, the edit rules are only within the application. So so the edit rules would not get applied if you're editing them through Pro. So you could probably do something in Pro and then open up Address Manager to apply the edit rules.
Does Address Manager support attachments?
You can create feature types with attachments. Address Manager is not going to do anything with them right now, like display them or modify them, add them, or delete them. It would just basically ignore them. But that's an interesting use case. That's something we can look at. I'm not sure what the use cases would be for that. If you have any ideas, put them in the Q&A and we can certainly look into supporting attachments.
Everything else here looks like licensing related. So yeah, so I, yep.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris. I think we got one more minute. We're probably winding down.
Yeah, thank you all for joining. If you do have licensing questions, please reach out to your account manager. If we're able to follow up after this, I believe we get a list of these questions sent to us. We will. So yeah, thank you guys. And yeah, good luck getting ready for NG9-1-1.
Thank you, everybody. Take care. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.